Guys. So right now I'm just chilling, watching TV, and I was thinking. So last year around this time, I was in labor. I went into labor on a Friday. Well, I didn't go into labor. Okay, take that back. I went to labor on into labor on a Monday. I started having contractions. I went to the hospital. The hospital told me to go home pretty much because my contractions weren't strong enough to not induce me, but you know what I mean. Admit me, yeah. So we'll go back home, and over the next days, I know I'm in labor, but my water didn't break. So come Friday, I had a doctor's appointment, and we go into the doctor's office, and at the doctor's office, they do the normal checkup and everything, and she asked me, how am I feeling, how's the baby doing and everything else. So I tell her, baby's fine. I haven't felt her in a couple days. I just automatically assumed that she was asleep, and that's about it. I just assumed that she was asleep. She hadn't been moving much all night. So she says, well, let me put you on a monitor. So they put me on the monitor, and I'm sitting there in the room with Alex, which is my husband. And as I'm sitting there, they come in, they check, they leave out. So, excuse me, that is my cat, Princess. So they leave out. So, as they leave out and everything, what happened? I get worried and I get concerned because by this time I have been there for almost a half an hour. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on. So they come back and they say, well, Mrs. Winina, your baby has a low heart rate. And if the heart rate doesn't get any better, we might send you over to the hospital. So I was like, oh, okay. And I was fine with that. So another hour go past, her heart rate didn't go up. It was still quite low. So they come back in and they say, the one with Mrs. Winina, oh, we're going to send you over to the hospital. So I say, okay, look at Alex and like, okay, we're going. So we head over to the hospital, and as we're on the way to the hospital, Alex turns to me and say, well, honey, I really don't want to go into this hospital because I don't want to just go here for no reason. And they send you back home, and, you know, I just don't want to go. So I said, okay, just drop me off, and you can go ahead and go home because I know you got to go to work tonight. And he was concerned about work. And I said, I'll call my grandma up here to hang out with me until, figure it out. So he's like that. I'm like, uh-huh. So we get into the hospital. He goes to park the car. We walk over to the hospital, and we get into the hospital, go to the labor and delivery floor. I check in and say they sent me over here, da 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 da. So we get back, and they hook me up to some monitors again. Well, as I'm on the monitors, baby heart rate still does not go up. And at this time, I wanted to do a natural birth. I mean, extremely natural. No epidural, no nothing. I had it all planned out. I did the classes. I did everything. So I was set and I was prepared for a natural birth. So I'm like, am I still going to be able to do my natural birth? Is everything okay? They said, well, Miss Winina, if her heart rate go up, then we can talk about it. But right now, we have to monitor her heart rate. So I'm like, okay. So by this time, because I went to the doctor around 11 a.m. So by the time it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So by this time, what happened? A doctor comes in. They say, well, we might switch you over to labor and delivery. So I'm like, okay, well, we're trying to wait until our heart rate go up, because I really, 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 really wanted a natural birth with Adriana. So what happened? They finally just switched me over to labor and delivery. And as you know, we're in labor and delivery. They hooked me back up to monitors and everything else. So I call my parents up there. My parents come up there and everything else. And I'm sitting there with Alex, and I'm worried, and he's worried. The baby's having a low heart rate and everything else. So we're worried about Anna Banana. So later on that day, what happened? So later on that day, um, it was about 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock, and I'm still in labor. 6 o'clock, I'm still in labor, and extremely nothing has changed. Anna is still, you know, not coming. She's not coming. She's not coming out. She's in there. She's in there good. So Anna's not coming out. I'm worried. I'm frustrated. And I'm trying to figure out, like, what's going on. So eventually, no, it was 8. 8 o'clock, they come in and they say, we might have to induce your labor and you might have to get a C section. So, you know, that's not something that I wanted to hear. And I really wanted to try to go natural. So, I turned to Alex, and after, the nurses and stuff went out the room, and I turned to Alex, and I'm like, so what do you want to do? So, Alex is like, um, I don't know. So, I'm like, okay. So, about an hour and a half later, Durst come in. She says, okay, we're going to induce you. So they put the Foley in to help try to induce, and they were hoping that the Foley would help dilate me. So they put that in. The Foley dilated me to 4 centimeters, and it was in for from I think 9 o'clock until like 4 a.m. 4 a.m. it was in, did not come out, and everything else. So then they said, we're going to try to attempt to break your water. So they tried to attempt to break my water. My water would not break. My water just absolutely would not break. So they said, Mrs. Wynonna, your water is so far up that we can't reach it to break it. So, we're going to try to increase your contractions. So they put me on Pitocin. So I'm on Pitocin. My water still won't break and everything else. So by this time, I think it was, what time was it? What time was it? By this time it was, what time was it? Okay, by this time it was like 7 o'clock in the morning. By this time it was about 7 o'clock in the morning, and my water still would not break. I'm frustrated and I'm getting all bent out of shape, but it is what it is. So they're trying to break my water, and it was just a lot. It was just a lot going on. So later on, what happened? So later on, what happened later on? Oh, the doctor comes back in and she says, well, what do you want to do? Do you still want to try to go into labor and this and this and this? So I was like, no. And I had already got the epidural by this time because episode was kicking my butt. So by this time, I went to sleep from the, epidural and everything else. I didn't took a nap. And around, I think, 8 o'clock, I called the nurse in and I say, you know what? Alex and I decided we are going to we're gonna do the C-section. So we prepping for the C-section and everything else. And the girl said, well, you have to wait until your doctor gets here. So I said, okay. We waiting and stuff like that. The doctor comes in. She said, so I heard that you wanted to do the C-section and everything. I said, yeah. So she says, well, we have a few people ahead of you and we'll get back to you to get you prepped. So okay, so I say okay. So I send Alex on home because at the time we had our dog. So I send Alex on home, and Alex is taking care of the dog and stuff like that. And they come back in the room. By this time, my mom and dad came back up to the hospital. So Alex come on in the room, and I call my mom and I was like, "Hey, mom, they came back. They said that they're gonna try to do the C-section and everything else around this such and such time." So my mom comes back and everything else. So around this time, it was like 8:30. Alex had left, and then the doctor came back in around 9 o'clock and said, "Okay, we want you to sign these papers, and we're gonna get you prepped for surgery." So I said, okay, I signed it. Not less than 5 minutes later, the doctor come back in because she had already told me some people were before me and say, all right, we're taking you back. Alex is not at the hospital at all. It's just me, my parents, and that's it. Alex is not there. So I'm already nervous. I'm panicking. My husband's nowhere to be found. And I'm in labor. So I called Alex. I'm like, hey, honey, you got to make it back up to the hospital to see your child be born. So he turns around and he comes straight back to the hospital. And then they wheel me back. So they didn't even wait for him to come to the hospital room or anything. They just wheel me back. So after they wheel me back, you know, he finally makes it to the hospital. And when he comes into the hospital room, he's like, where's my wife? Da 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 da. They're like, oh, she's went back to have the emergency C-section. Da 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 da, because her heart rate was still down. So he wheels me back. He says, well, I need to be back there with my wife. I need to be back there with my wife. The nurse says, are you sure you're supposed to be back there? Yeah, he's my husband. So why wouldn't he be back there? So he comes on back there. They bring him back, and just in time, they get ready to prep me and take the baby out. And sure enough, 5-10 minutes later, I'm getting cut open and everything else. And Adriana was born at 10:01 a.m. Saturday morning, August 19th. And so, as soon as she came out, she's a beautiful baby already, but she was just, oh, my heart just melted. And I was like, just check on the baby. Don't worry about me. Just make sure she's fine and everything else. And he yells out, hi, Adriana. And he named our child because it was between Athena or Adriana. And we went with Adriana. And then all of a sudden, my blood pressure started going up. I started to have high blood pressure. So then they rushed me and, stitched me up the best that they could. And they put me over in recovery. And as I'm in recovery, they waiting for my blood pressure to go down. They're waiting for my blood pressure to go down. My blood pressure didn't go down until about 3 o'clock, 3, 4 o'clock that day. That's how long my blood pressure was up. So my blood pressure finally went down. They finally take me to my room and everything else. Everybody comes see the baby, and I'm a breastfeeding mom, so I tried to breastfeed. Breastfeed wasn't quite working in the beginning, and breastfeeding didn't quite work for the first month of her almost. So my baby was very, very small because I was trying to breastfeed. Because I was like 15 minutes on each side, 15 minutes on each side, which I should have just felt on my heart and just let her eat into her heart content. And eventually that's what I did, and she gained weight. She gained weight. She became a big, beautiful, healthy baby, thriving. And now she is almost a year old, and she is a wonderful testament to that whole situation. I mean, I was told I couldn't have children. I was told that I wouldn't be mentally stable because I had seizures growing up, and I was just told a lot of different stuff. So I was under the assumption that I could not have children, and the fact that I have a child is a blessing. And so, I just wanted to come over and tell you my labor and delivery story. My water did not break at all, and it was scary, but I made it through, and I have a beautiful baby girl. So, yeah, thanks for watching my labor and delivery story. With love, CC out.